September 11th, 2016 marked my 37th birthday, and what better way to celebrate than with the arrival of some fantastic new model kits. My thoughtful brother-in-law surprised me with two gifts, a 1 to 35 scale Bell H-13H Helicopter and a 1 to 350 scale model of the World War II German U-boat. The helicopter kit, in particular, holds a special place for me. I've been eager to tackle this project ever since I first spotted the kit a few years ago. As a devoted fan of the classic TV show MASH, having watched every single episode, I thought it would be amazing to recreate the iconic helicopter featured in the series. In March 2018, I finally began working on the kit. One of the first components I tackled was the engine, which you can see here fully assembled. To enhance its realism, I applied Vallejo engine wash, carefully coating the assembled engine to achieve a weathered and authentic appearance. Since the engine is prominently exposed on this early model helicopter, it provides a great opportunity to showcase the intricate details. I want to ensure every visible component looks its absolute best, adding depth and character to the overall build. By mid-April, I had successfully installed the engine and exhaust pipes onto the frame. The exhaust pipes in particular proved to be a significant challenge. Aligning them correctly required meticulous effort and several adjustments before I was finally satisfied with the result. Their complex shape and positioning demanded patience and precision. As with every scale model I build, I make sure to sign and date it, marking the year it was completed. However, with this helicopter, the wireframe structure made it difficult to find an ideal spot for my signature. After some consideration, I realized that the only unobtrusive location would be behind the seat, where it wouldn't interfere with the overall design or detract from the model's aesthetic. By May 20th, I had finished detailing the control panel, using the provided decal sheet and carefully painting the various buttons. The decal itself was a single piece that displayed all the gauges, but due to the raised buttons positioned between them, the sheet wouldn't adhere properly. To work around this, I had to cut out each gauge individually and place them one by one with tweezers. Although the extra effort certainly paid off in terms of the final appearance, I can't help but feel that this was a design flaw on Revell's part. The process, while rewarding, could have been much simpler with a more thoughtful approach to the decal layout. The following day, I glued the seats, control sticks, and control panel into place on the cockpit base. Initially, I attempted to hand paint the rotors black, but the results were far from satisfactory. The brush strokes were noticeable, so I decided to switch to spray painting instead. Even then, the brush marks remained visible, which was frustrating. To fix this, I applied 2 coats of Tamiya Fine Primer spray paint, followed by another 2 coats of black spray paint. While the results were acceptable, they weren't perfect. Next, I carefully masked off the tips and applied 5 coats of yellow for a sharp finish. Once the yellow was dry, I moved on to painting the center pieces with a metallic color. In the coming days, I plan to use some black Tamiya panel line accent to add depth and enhance the details of these parts. Fast forward to July 27th, 2018. After a long break, I finally returned to complete the kit. Upon reviewing my progress, I determined that the next logical step was to paint the yellow section of the tail area and install the tail rotor drive shaft. With that done, I moved on to painting the 2 litters, which are stretchers, but I wasn't satisfied with the outcome. The brush strokes were too prominent, making the finish look sloppy. I decided to strip the paint and start over. My second attempt was far more successful, with a smoother and more consistent finish. To complete the litters, I freehand painted the canopies without using any masks, which allowed for a more precise and clean result. 2 days later, I assembled the 3 rotor pieces together. The tricky part was finding a way to let the glue dry while keeping the rotor blades horizontal. I know many modelers choose to bend the rotor blades, but since I planned to display the helicopter in flight, I didn't feel the need to do so. I carefully positioned the blades to ensure they remained in a steady, horizontal position while the glue set, which allowed for a clean and realistic look when the assembly was complete. On August 4th, after completing the assembly, painting, and decal application for the cockpit, I proceeded to apply a dull coat to seal everything in place. By the end of the day, I glued the cockpit into place on the frame. At this point, it's really starting to take shape and resemble a helicopter. 2 days later, I installed the litters on each side of the chassis. I decided to leave the canopies until the end of the build to minimize the risk of damaging them. It must have been a harrowing experience to be a patient on one of those stretchers, especially in the context of a helicopter in the midst of an emergency in a war zone. The next morning, I completed adding the decals and then applied a layer of dull coat to seal everything. I encountered some confusion when trying to figure out which tank went on which side of the helicopter, as the images in the instruction manual were conflicting. Ultimately, I trusted my own judgment and proceeded with what seemed most logical. The instruction manual for the MASH version of the helicopter suggests adding red decals to the tail section to create a yellow-red stripe pattern. While the decals themselves are easy to apply, I did some quick math and realized I didn't have enough to complete the pattern. Despite confirming that the spacing between the red decals was equal to the width of the decal itself, I noticed that the length of the decals was about 1 millimeter too short, as seen in the stripe on the right. Given how much I like the look of this design, I've decided to make my own decals tomorrow to fix the issue and ensure everything aligns perfectly. Using standard paper for a few test prints until I got the correct size and color. Once I was satisfied with the results, I printed them onto special transparent decal paper. The process went smoothly and I sprayed a flat coat to seal everything. But then I realized I had made a mistake. I rushed ahead and applied a dull coat spray instead of Tester's decal bonder spray. Upon closer inspection, I noticed the decals were covered in tiny cracks, a result of the wrong coating. It looks like I'll need to start over and redo the decals properly. After the mistake I made the previous day, I reprinted a fresh set of red stripes and applied the correct spray this time. A few hours later, I began installing the decals, but by the third one, I realized something wasn't right. Since I had used transparent decal sheets instead of white ones, the red decals weren't fully opaque. This caused the yellow paint underneath to show through, making the stripes look uneven and incomplete. After 2 failed attempts, I was determined to get this part of the kit right. While I briefly considered leaving the tail yellow, I couldn't let go of how much the stripes added to the overall look. Reprinting the red stripes on white decal paper was an option, but it would require meticulously cutting each strip to size, a time-consuming process with no guarantee of perfect results. Instead, I decided to try something different. Tamiya masking tape for curves. Its plastic-like texture made it ideal for creating precise masks on curved surfaces. It took about 20 minutes to carefully mask the sections, preparing them for red paint. By August 9th, with the kit nearly complete, I decided to install the glass dome onto the cockpit. For this, I used a special adhesive from Microscale Industries called Micro Crystal Clear, as regular super glue would risk fogging the transparent plastic. I had considered applying future polish, a well-known trick among modelers to enhance clarity and realism, but I've never attempted it before. I didn't want to risk damaging such a unique and critical part of the build. However, this is definitely a technique I'll need to explore and invest some time into mastering in the future. The next day, I finished applying 2 coats of flat red paint to the tail section. The results look fantastic, giving the area a clean and vibrant finish. To complete this part of the build, I installed the tail rotor, bringing the tail section to life. I then installed the canopies for each of the litters. The process went smoothly, but I noticed one issue. The red cross decals on the inside appeared white, which was a bit disappointing. In hindsight, if I had realized this earlier, I would have masked and spray painted them instead. I attempted to install the main rotor onto the helicopter, but despite my best efforts, I couldn't get it to fit properly. From what I could determine in the instructions, a plastic rod should have been inserted into the motor, allowing the rotor to spin freely. After multiple attempts, the plastic rod unfortunately snapped. Thankfully, the helicopter itself didn't suffer any damage. To resolve the issue, I cut a small metal rod and superglued it to the rotor. While this solution works, it means the rotor could technically fall off if the model is inverted, a small compromise to finally get this part installed. On Wednesday, August 15th, 2018, I completed building my MASH helicopter and suspended it in my glass shelf using transparent fishing line. This project took a total of 25 hours and 55 minutes to complete. While I appreciated the opportunity to build a model inspired by one of my favorite TV shows, I've decided that, unless absolutely necessary, I'll avoid purchasing older Revell kits in the future. Although they were enjoyable to build during my childhood, this kit came with numerous challenges, including unclear instructions and subpar quality in the parts and decals. Experiences like this have reaffirmed my preference for brands like Tamiya, which consistently offer higher quality kits. My only regret with this build is not adding a patient or two to the stretchers for more realism, but I was eager to finish and move on from the frustrations of this kit. Despite its challenges, I'm proud to add this iconic piece to my collection as a MASH fan. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to check out my video. I hope you enjoyed it, perhaps learned something new, or even inspired you. Until next time, keep on scale modeling.